It's going to take us live in pre-show. Let's see. And let's get a sound check from our audience. And I'm going to set my phone to stun so I don't get any annoying impositions here.
I have you on the live stream as well, but I'm also muted there, so. Okay. We're live.
We are live. We are indeed live on the live stream, and that's what I want to check here is on the phone to see if it's where I think if it's going all the places it needs to go.
Actually, that's quite a lot of lag from this end.
Yeah, that's why you can't ever watch the live stream and do anything with it. Let's see.
I haven't ever popped out the chat, but maybe I should here.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Well, I'm not seeing us show up in Facebook. I tried something different on that. And let's just go back and do it the old-fashioned way, see what that looks like. Hello, folks. Glad you could join us today. We've got a few little details we're cleaning up here, as the case may be. And, 250. Oh, you know what? I put the wrong time in that thing. I'm all the time doing that. I confuse myself with time zones. So let's go live now. There we go. Go live. That should have done it. Okay, very good. Very good. And we're live there. Good. And let's see how we did on the other. Check test 1, 2, 3. There we are. Good. All right. I'm loving this. Michael, it looks like we might just have a show here.
Hey.
Hey. Indeed. Indeed. All right, folks in chat, welcome. Glad you are here. Michael Rempel is our guest today. We're going to be getting to the show here in just a second, but I did want to give a big shout out to anybody that's watching us on YouTube directly or on Facebook. Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and start the Periscope stream. And I want to welcome you to come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com because that's where the chat room is. And currently those guys are talking about Dinty Moore beef stew. I'm not quite sure how that applies to this show. We'll have to have a talk with some of them. Oh, I think they're talking about Christmas dinner. Okay, well, that tells you the quality of the chat room we're working with. Michael, you remember we talked about how to pitch what we're going to talk about today? Well, we may need to lower it about 6 or 10
I think
inches.
maybe you're right. They were talking about tape earlier, too. I was watching a little bit of that.
Yep. And I forgot to turn off my auto, whatever it is. We'll work on that. All right, Martin S. says, thank you, Martin. Martin is watching in the boot of his car in the boonies of Great Britain there somewhere. And Dave likes he likes your headphones, Michael. That's
yeah,
Dave
these
Edwards.
are studio cans. These are isolators for people working in studio when you don't want to hear anything else but what's coming through the headset.
Yeah. And I do
You
need
can
you to
put this-
shift a little bit more back to your
yeah.
right. Yeah, and then back away from the camera just a little bit. All right, so who have we got here?
This man is really fussy about his video quality. My goodness.
You would think that I would spend more time getting it fixed, too. Mike
Well,
is
no,
here.
I miss
Kurt,
people.
Todd.
I need to tell you, I messed him up. He didn't mess me up. Okay.
And you notice
He had it just
your
he
headroom
had it
is,
just right. Okay.
yep,
And then I messed him up.
yep. There we go. All right, go ahead and tilt your camera down just a hair again, because I want you to be in a comfortable position while you're talking. Because what happens is, and I'm doing the same thing right now. Let me get my chair adjusted. Is I get in a spot that's good and looks good, and then I shrink as the show moves on. So I want you to be really comfortable. All right, let's give a shout out to Mike and Marie and Kurt, Todd, Rudy, Sam watching from Mississippi, Indrit Giles from the UK, Greg Merle from Merle, is it Indiana? I never remember. Rich, Dan, Dave, Guido, Dave, Tommy is watching from right up the road here. He's got his volleyball team out at the house today practicing. David, Timothy, Kent, Kenny, Amnon, his Nissan Communications, Martin K, of course, Martin Stuckey, of course, Peter, Guest 716. Now, Guest 716, I would remind you that when you choose a number that has some significance, so we want to hear from you what 716 is. Martin S, so that's our third Martin. Jan and Jesper. Is it Jesper or Jesper? One of these days I'm going to get it right. And Guido says that my color is shifting. That's true. I forgot to turn off the automatic white balance. So I tell you what, let's do. We are at showtime. We're going to go into showtime. I'm going to show you guys how to turn off the automatic white balance, I think, live. We'll see. And then we'll bring Michael into the show. So, Michael, I'm gonna mute you. No offense intended, but I'm gonna mute you for just a second. Did I see that mute work? Let's see, Michael, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well,
Whether you can hear me, that's another thing.
You know
I don't
what?
know.
Yeah. I gotta mute you right there. Okay, you're muted now. And you know what? We're gonna take just another second. I'm gonna fix this video thing before we go live, because otherwise it's gonna drive me bonkers. So let's get that one going. 1 second, please. And we'll go over to COM3. We'll open COM3. We'll go to the advanced menu. And we're going to turn off the white balance. Is that going to do it right there? Yep, I think that did it. Okay. So that's what we wanted, and we will save that. And X out of that. And put that back. And put that back. That back. See, I have all these things that I got to get part of the show here. All right. So Michael is still muted, and we are going to go to fade to black, and we'll be right back. It worked. All right, great. Hey, I'm Tom Sinclair, and this is Streaming Idiots. I am delighted and excited that you could join us today. If you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter or Periscope or even YouTube directly, I would invite you to come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com, where you can get in on the chat room, where I don't even want to tell you what they're chatting about right now. There's no telling what that group's, but there are a bunch of them over there, and they're having a big time. And I want to appreciate all of you. I do appreciate all of you that have come in live for the show today. Live is always so much more fun. But if you're watching us later on YouTube or Facebook or Periscope, we'd love to have you come join us live Wednesday afternoons, 3 o'clock Eastern at easternshorebroadcasting.com is the best way to do that. Somebody says, "What's behind Tom's head?" Don't do that to me while I'm live. Oh, who was that? Gee whiz. That was Giles. Gee whiz, Giles. Yeah, what am I going to do with you? Holy cow. I am really excited about our guest today, Michael Rempel, the professor of audio. The audio professor, we're going to call him, is going to come in and he's going to make your brain explode when he talks about audio. I can't wait. But I had a few things that I wanted to cover before that. One is that, and I haven't announced this anywhere, so you guys are going to be the first to hear it. We did talk a little bit last week about coming up in January. We're going to start our live streaming rookies program. It'll be a 6-week live training class, and we want to polish that a little bit. So anybody that's interested in that before then, we're going to start it next week or the week after at half price. Normally it's $99, but for $49 you can get in on the 6-week training. And we don't have anything up. I mean, this is the epitome of terrible marketing. But if you're interested, shoot me a note, tom@easternshorebroadcasting.com. We're going to do an afternoon session and an evening session. So whichever works out best for you time-wise, you can get in on that. It is limited. It's limited to 12 people. So we don't want a ton of people because we want to have a lot of personal interaction. So it'll be a series of presentations with questions and answers and discussion. It'll be a lot of fun. So, and I got ARAM already on the list. I knew, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to push it up, because you guys need it now. You don't need to wait till January to do that. Anyway, all right. Oh my gosh, Marie says that they're watching on the big screen in the living room. You guys need to get a life. I mean, that is just too much. The other things that are coming up is, if you are thinking that you might want to go to NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters Conference and Trade Show in Las Vegas in April, you probably need to make your hotel reservations now. I was making mine just the other day, and I saw that my favorite hotel was, not only was it already booked, but its prices were like 30% higher than last year. So I would encourage you to make those reservations. We are going to have a Streaming Idiots meetup at NAB on Tuesday night. Location to be confirmed, but we're hoping, Scott Whitney, that you'll let us use your studio again. That was such a blast last year to actually be in a live streaming studio for a meetup. It was a ton of fun. So put on your calendars for Tuesday, I think that's the 9th or the 10th of April, the Streaming Idiots meetup at NAB. It'll be offsite and it'll be a ton of fun. You will not, if there's an event that you want to go to in live streaming next year, 2018, it's going to be NAB, and it's going to be the Streaming Idiots meetup at NAB. You won't want to miss that. I wanted to make sure I've got all my notes done. Yeah, full disclosure, this is a giant infomercial. Hopefully a lot of info and a little bit of commercial, but here's the commercial. I'm a reseller for vMix and Magewell and Marshall. That's the camera we're using today. And PTZ Optics. We finished up our PTZ Optics group buy. We've got just a little bit of time. So if you're interested in a PTZ Optics camera, we see if we can't squeeze you into the tail end of the group buy. We're closing that up. But we were able to get some really good pricing. So it's really exciting. The other thing that we do, again, this is part of the commercial now, I design and build custom streaming PCs. You say, oh, well, Tom, I don't need a custom. I just need something off the shelf. Well, we have those too. If you go to our website, easternshorebroadcasting.com, you can see some of the more common ones that we have right there. So there we go. What else? Have we covered all the bases? All right, let's talk about audio. Let's talk about audio. Yes. Everybody struggles with audio. Well, not Michael doesn't struggle with audio, but everybody else, except maybe Martin Kay and Mike Phillips, struggle with audio sooner or later. Video is easy because you can see it. It's here, and it's there, and it's there, and it's there. And if it's not right, it's evident. Audio is cover your ears, it's a friggin' mystery. It can be an absolute nightmare. You can have double audio, triple audio. Sometimes if you're really good, you can have quadruple audio, and it's all going at different times at different levels, and who in the world knows where it's coming from? You can control audio on your mixer or your audio interface. Some microphones actually have a volume level on it. You can control audio in Windows. You can control audio in vMix, several different places. And who knows where the problem is? Heaven forbid you're doing something really fancy with audio. Basically, it's like plug a microphone into my PC and let that be. Well, even then, you've got 4 or 5 different pathways that the audio's going through. Not to mention all of the things that audio does in and of itself in terms of the characteristics of audio. And that is what our guest today, Michael Rempel, is going to talk about. He is the audio professor. So, Michael, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. And we probably ought to do an audio check before we get you going just to make sure I turned your audio on right.
Did you get it?
I got it. Who was it? There was somebody on the show a while back where I did that, and they go, "Did you get it?" And just, I hate that. I hate that. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out today to come on the show and to teach us about audio. And you and I had a great session yesterday where we sort of ran through what we wanted to talk with. And folks, I'll tell you, Michael's got like 6 months worth of audio stuff, and that's probably still just cutting the surface. Fill us in on your background. Tell us why you are qualified to carry the title that I gave you, the audio professor.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just some of the highlights. Some of the highlights.
Back when I was 18 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
I was really into music, and I did some touring and went on tour with some of the bands. Got into it a fair bit. Didn't really learn a lot of the theory behind it, and decided that I wanted a real career eventually, and went into programming as software development, but never lost the passion. And I've been doing shows and working with people for years and years. Mixing for concerts, mixing for festivals, and so on. The theoretical aspect of it came in when I started being really interested in designing better sound equipment in the digital era. Because I knew for a fact that in the analog era, we didn't have control over delays. Delay is a very expensive thing to set up the time coherence of a system. I'll get into that later if we want, but that physical attribute was missing from all the analog stuff in the world at that point. I started building a parametric equalizer that had some delay features built in. I started designing pan that doesn't use volume anymore, because normally when you got stereo, you got 2 speakers, and the loudness of one is versus the other is what tells you what the pan is. But in the real world, actually, it's the delay between 2 different sounds arriving at your ears that tells you within about 1 degree where the source is coming from. And so, pan-based delays are actually more accurate. Some of the loudness is in there, but pan is really more delay than it is loudness.
All right, hold on a second. I got to interrupt. You and I made an agreement, and that is that that sometimes you like to get down this road down here.
We went down a long bunny trail just now.
Yes. So I'm going to pull you back.
And we lost a whole bunch of people doing it.
No. They're just waiting for the meat. They're just waiting for the meat. So, but you have worked on all sorts of really cool projects.
Well, not only in audio,
right?
But anyway, okay.
Right.
Let's talk about. I have design credits on Avatar, the movie.
Now we're talking.
I have design and new media architecture credits from the Canadian Museum for Human Rights as a senior developer, architect, designer for their system.
Right.
I've done a lot of fairly large, fairly important computer and audio related things over the years. And so I know a little bit. and maybe other people on the chat so on know some things I don't know. I don't know. But let's start with some basics about what audio is, what sound is.
Yeah, I'm with you.
What?
Come on.
Okay.
I'm playing to the chat room. Playing to the chat room.
Okay.
Yes, give us the basics. And if I need to bring up
Um,
a chart or a graph or a picture or something, holler.
okay. So what is sound? We haven't talked about it, but sound is usually depicted as a bunch of waves. But the reality of sound is that it's actually air pressure playing on various things in this space. When you get a sound that's created, say the bang from a gun or something, and you got every frequency in the whole world going off, you hear some of those frequencies just go away immediately, and some of them reverberate
Right?
and sustain for a while. The ones that sustain for a while are sustained by the physical resonances of the room or the space you're in or the space that it occupies. Every thing in the entire universe is actually a resonator in audio. That's
Okay.
a physical property of everything, just like reflecting light is a physical property.
Right?
Okay. So when you're creating sound with something like a violin or a tuba, the violin is usually regarded as a very pure sound, a sine wave, a single frequency, we call it. What are sine waves and what are they, what are they good for? What are they useful for? Those are the fundamental, I call them the fundamental building blocks of sound. When you look at the sound spectrum, the way we do as we're analyzing it, I'm trying to make this simple, and to me, these are concepts that I don't think about a lot because they're just there. But
Right?
to be clear enough, okay, so a sine wave is the fundamental building block of what a sound is.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get a bunch of them together, they create the characteristic sound. So you get a bunch of frequencies emanating. When I do that, for example, there's a bunch of sine waves that are components of the sound that I just created with my hand.
Right?
We use sine waves in sound because they're mathematically elegant and we can compute with them, not because they're fundamentally better than any other shape. But there it is. That's good. So when we talk about frequencies, we're always talking about sine wave frequencies. And we're always talking about sound being composed of these sine waves at various amplitudes, volumes, and in relationship to one another. So let's be real simple. Tom always likes simple, so we'll talk about one frequency instead of a bunch of them. At one frequency, I told you that the frequency relates to the physical size. How does that work? The physical length of a sound wave is related to the speed of sound.
Right.
Speed of sound is constant. And if you want the magic number, it's 1,125 feet per second.
Yes.
Okay. Or I believe it's 432 meters per second, which means a 1 kilohertz signal is 432 millimeters if you go metric. No math involved. But if you're going, say, 1 millisecond worth of sound, it's going to travel about 13 inches. So all of those, the length of the sound and the frequency of the sound are all related to one another mathematically.
Right.
Okay? So when you know the distance or the size of a thing, you know the frequency. All right?
Okay.
That's if it's creating it, that's where it creates it at the sweet spot. And if it's receiving it or bouncing it or dealing with it or playing with it, that's That's the best way to understand the frequency.
Okay.
And the frequency,
Is now a good time to talk about how where microphones plug into this?
you want to, don't you?
Yes, I do. I want to talk about microphones. And you want to talk about microphones too. Because you've got
so
like 60 microphones sitting there in your studio.
well, yeah, I have a few.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one is a measurement mic. This one is homemade. This is where I want people to think about sound, not in terms of the brand name or the manufacturer or anything like that, but that is a classic little mic.
Okay, your camera got shifted off to the side. We need to shift you
Where
back
am I
in.
here? This is an SM57,
Okay.
and it's a dynamic mic. What's a dynamic mic?
Well, I can answer that
Well,
question.
Okay, go ahead.
A dynamic mic is a flashlight.
Well, it works that way,
Yeah.
but a dynamic mic could also be an omnidirectional.
Turn your camera back a little bit more towards your right shoulder. Because it got moved.
Oh,
It got
did I?
moved. Yeah, it got moved a
Yeah,
little
I
bit.
got some
when you
wires
grabbed
that
it.
are pulling things here. Sorry.
That's all right. That's good. Yeah, there you go. That's good. That's good.
This is my play shop. Okay. Everything is piled on everything, and I don't make any apologies for that. So, what's a dynamic mic? Well, when they started off in the golden old days, back in Alexander Graham Bell's day, they put carbon in a little tube, and they put a diaphragm that vibrates on the front of that. And the diaphragm would push on the carbon and change its electrical characteristics, the resistance of the diaphragm. And when you put some voltage through that, then it would then translate that into a wavelength. Now, those are really horrible. The next step they went to was they say, well, okay, let's go with some graphite plates because those have a more predictable, stable interaction. Some of the old guys on the channel might remember you getting out your headset, can't hear. Don't listen to this. I'm going to bang the phone. And you bang the phone on the desk, and you come back and, oh yeah, now it sounds clear again. Well, that was because all the carbon fibers had managed to settle at the bottom and didn't work anymore.
I have to hit my mic all the time. Yeah, I understand. I got you.
The graphite plates helped quite a bit, and that was, that's a classic sound that us old guys all know because that's the sound of the handset phone,
Right.
before the modern microphones came along. Well, then they came along with these guys. The difference is it still has that wobbly diaphragm, but there's a electric coil at the base of this mic that the wobbly thing vibrates up and down, and it's a little bit better at gathering and keeping the sound properly. I'm not. I was going to take it apart, but this one doesn't come apart that way properly easily. So,
Hammer.
oh no. By the way, that's what the Shure microphone company is famous for. It's not so much that the Shure dynamic mics, this 57 and the 58, are all that good quality. They're not. Never were supposed to be. But the thing is that they are pretty much indestructible. Then they came along with these guys. This is an old Audio-Technica, and it's been modified internally. And I, did some changes to the electronics. You won't see that; it's in the handle. But I wanted to show you the capsule here. I'll talk to you about how these guys get designed. You can see inside there's some foam in there. That's to stop me from spitting on it so that it doesn't go down in the diaphragm. There's some more foam in here that's also designed to protect the microphone. The capsule itself is way down here at the bottom, the gray thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is actually a different kind of mic. This is a condenser. And
Aha.
all the word condenser really means when compared to dynamic is that instead of using passive electronics where the voltage is kind of generated by the mic and it gets shoved down the wire to go to the speaker,
Right.
this thing actually has active electronics in it that get fed by, you can feed it with a transistor. And usually in these guys, they will also have some equalization, and they will also have a op amp that is driving the output. So it sends a little bit of a stronger signal back to the mixer. Not usually. Strength isn't really what's important there as much as it is a clean signal that nothing can mess with. Because one of the things most people don't know is about frequency-based electronics is that you can push stuff into one of these mics, but you can, as well as, audio from this end, you can push it in, but it can also be pushed out. On the old SM57 I was showing you, if you took a diagram, a circuit diagram of this mic, and compared it to a little speaker, there's no difference.
Uh-huh.
They're
That's
the
what they
same
were
thing.
talking about in chat, that the mic could be used as a speaker. Not that you would ever use
Well,
it as that, but you could.
Actually, some guys do use about a 4-inch speaker as a kick drum mic.
As a mic. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. So they use a
Yeah.
speaker as a mic because it has the same characteristics. I like it.
Well,
All right, so we got
it's
condenser
also,
mics and we got dynamic mics, and that's kind of our two basic. Am I safe in saying that's kind of two basic categories?
okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's pull up. There's other ones. There's ribbon mics. There's other things too. But it's all amounts to one of those diaphragmy things vibrating and pushing on something electronic.
Right.
Okay. The magic sauce for a ribbon mic is that it is really good at hearing the sustaining sounds of like a violin, whereas the dynamic and the condenser mics are better at hearing the smack of a drum.
Okay.
So that's impulse response versus sustained response.
Okay. Okay.
And, I've got mostly condensers because I can fix it in the mix. My nicest one right here is $300. I won't tell you what my most expensive one is. It's not here and it won't ever be here. But I have some decent mics. And there are some that are purpose built for different things
Right.
that I have as well.
You sound much better today than you did yesterday when I was talking with you.
Yeah, well,
To
because I
my
was on
amateur ear.
because I
mic
was
are
on
you-
this cheap piece of junky plastic.
What mic are you using today?
This is the Rode S1.
Are you using any compression with it?
I'm using nothing.
Nothing.
It's a flat EQ. There's nothing there.
So tell me about EQ. How does EQ affect what we're talking about?
Well, it's a badly named principle for a really good tool.
Okay.
When you've got a sound source that's coming in that has excessive sound in one area and not enough in another,
Okay.
well, we'll just talk about the single, simple one microphone to start with, okay?
Good.
So say I'm really heavy bass and I'm just blowing you away.
Yes.
And you want to fix that at the board because you think this is ridiculous. I need to. So you go to your bass frequencies, which are the low end of the scale,
Right.
and you turn a knob, and the bass that's coming out of here goes down and becomes quieter
It just turns down the volume
But-
on one particular frequency.
on one particular frequency or set of frequencies. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm liking this. I can understand this. This is good.
Okay.
So it's just a volume control. So if I have 10 EQ knobs, I've got 10 different volume controls, and I can slice and dice my audio signal and adjust the volume of any particular part of it up or down.
Yep.
Now,
Now, you need to
ahead.
know what the frequency is. Okay.
My ear doesn't
And
tell me
remember,
that?
well, to a point.
To a point.
But the frequency will tell you, your ear will tell you what the frequency is, but it won't tell you the number.
Unless I'm really
The
good.
the the mixer will tell you the number, but it won't tell you this is the tone you're hearing. You just have to figure that out for yourself.
Uh-huh.
So how do you
Okay.
do that? Well, I use because I'm usually dealing with musicians. I just use the musical scale. The A note at middle C, every musician knows is 440 hertz. That's a magical tuning number that everything else is based on.
Right.
And when you go from that A down an octave is always divided by 2. So it's 220. And the A below that is 110, then 55, and then 27.5. Going the other way from 440, it's 880 and so on up the scale.
Okay. I'm going to put a
So you
scale
can
up on the screen.
so you can always know, okay, there you go.
That's your audio right now in vMix, and I've got
Okay,
two,
so
4, 6, 8, 10 different volume knobs for different frequencies in that.
okay, so they're not using the 440 scale that we were talking about.
No.
Okay. They're starting at around 500.
Right.
I don't know why audio mixers always do that. But those are fairly standard numbers. Okay.
Okay. So 500 is a good 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, 16,000. That's the
So
same
you
kind
can
of doubling
see,
effect that you're talking about.
yeah, each one of those bars is only responsible for a whole octave.
Okay.
Your typical sound system graphic equalizer is going to be 31 bands, and it is responsible then for not one octave, but a third of an octave each band. Go ahead and kill that. You're going to start hearing my voice go away, and you're just going to have the upper end of this frequency band. See, there it is some more, and oh, now I'm really starting to squeal. Put it back.
That was awful.
All right. Yeah, well, that was horrible, but articulate enough. People understand what you did there. And I'll bring the high ends down. This is often done sometimes just for nice effect. All right. So, and when you push the 125 and the 62, now I'm going to sound profoundly bold and ballsy to everybody. And 250 and so on. This is, you can do a lot to change the character of the sound with it, with just the graphic equalizer and just a crude one like this. I mean, this isn't wrong. It's just you're affecting a whole lot of sound with each bar.
But it's fairly rudimentary. So that was 10, and I have a pretty wide slice of signal that I'm adjusting with each one of those 10. If I had 31, I would be adjusting a slimmer band of frequency with each one.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you another characteristic that you probably don't know about.
I can guarantee you I don't know it.
Well, even some of the folks on the channel won't know it, is that when you're pushing a frequency up, the wider you can get your band, the nicer it's going to sound. When you get really narrow bands and you push them up, they start to howl and squeal and get all kinds of crap in the sound.
Uh-huh.
Harmonic frequencies going off.
Right.
So the rule in my world that I use is whenever I can, I'm going to take those frequencies and I'm going to cut a bunch of them rather than pushing one up. But with this EQ setup, it's wide enough now, I'm doing a whole octave band, that I might be able to get away with pushing it up and not have it be really crappy sound. So there's a good reason for the guys who designed this to have done exactly what they did. And I applaud that.
Gotcha.
It makes it easier for guys like you who might not know.
Oh, yeah. And there's no might not to it. I mean, In audio, I've got to really stretch to be a neophyte.
Well, that's okay.
All right, so we talked a little bit about EQ and frequency. Let's talk about compression and does compression relate to that, or is that just a whole different ball? And while we talk about it, I'm going to bring up the same thing in
I want to
vMix.
finish. I want to finish with
You want to finish with EQ?
With an EQ that you don't have here.
Okay.
There's another EQ type called a parametric EQ, which was invented by a great Canadian. Called a parametric. You can adjust.
I'm just teasing. Keep going.
You get sick and tired of me talking about Canadians by the time this is done.
No. Some of my best friends are Canadians.
Yeah, well, so was Alexander Graham Bell, and
Right.
There's a lot of great audio guys from Canada. So the parametric EQ, usually on a mixer you get 4 of them, and you can adjust the bandwidth. The bandwidth parameter is something called Q, and It's ugly to understand Q. But basically, the wider it is, the smaller the Q number is, and the narrower the filter is, the tighter the band is.
Okay.
Kind of upside down thinking.
Okay.
You can think of it as division if you want to give you an idea.
All right.
Okay. And there again, the same principles apply. You can increase, you can decrease. It is all up to you. The other parameter, I was just looking in the chat, somebody said, didn't Alexander Bell not actually invent the telephone? I think he did.
Don't pay any attention. That's one of the Brits.
I'm gonna stop looking there. I'm gonna turn it off. In fact, so I can
wait till they start telling you things like your fly's down, and they'll put it all in caps like 10 different times. Or you have no audio. Well, of course I have audio. I know that.
Okay. Where was I?
Okay, we were transitioning into talking about compression.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I wanted to finish up with one other thought too.
Okay.
Along with those parametrics that will allow you to adjust the bandwidth, there's one that kind of does this or this.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a gain or a cut, and then followed by something flat that goes to infinity.
Okay.
Those are high cuts and low cuts.
All right.
Those are also available on your typical digital mixer or digital audio workstation software or whatever.
Okay.
vMix isn't providing those, and I don't blame them for not doing it, because that's for musicians more.
Right.
Okay. Right. Let's talk about compression.
Oh, let's talk about compression.
You want to talk about compression?
I do.
Well, what kind of compression do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to bring up the vMix compression because I'm using compression on you. You didn't know that.
Well, that's good. Well,
but I'm not.
I guessed it, but good. Because I know you're excited about compression.
I am. I'm thrilled. This is compression in vMix, and this is your mic, which is being picked up in Skype and passed through virtual audio cables into vMix. So it's supposedly a lossless kind of transport. And I've got you at a 5-to-1 ratio and a -10 threshold.
Okay, so in my terminology, I call that lopping.
Aha.
That's a lopping compressor.
That's a
and
lopping
compressor. What it's doing is it's taking my really loud stuff and knocking it down a bit.
Aha.
You remember in the good old days of audio tape, and they always used to talk about tape saturation? When you get to the top end of the dynamic range of the tape, it starts to compress for you.
Okay.
Because there's only so many magnetic little bits that would encode an audio signal, and you push it really hard and it just does a little bit more.
Okay.
That's the kind of compression you've got going right there.
All right.
On a 5-to-1. Okay. There's another kind of compression you can do, which is basically saying, oh, this guy's range is a bit crazy. and we're doing a really loud production, so we want to lean into his audio a little bit.
All right.
So your ratio in that case would be like 2 to 1 or a little less, and your threshold would be right at the bottom.
All right. Which way's bottom? Left or right?
Well, uh, keep going. Way down there. So I can be relatively quiet and it's still good, and I can get quite a bit louder and it's still sane. But you're not getting the same amount of volume gain what I'm producing. You're getting roughly half that. Let's go up to the other extreme here. Put the threshold way up at the top, -5 or something. Good enough. Now let's take the ratio and crank it.
Crank
Go to
it.
20 to 1.
Ooh.
20 to 1.
Okay.
See, now here, what I'm doing is I'm stopping the audio from clipping. My audio signal can come in and be really strong, but we get to a point where basically it gets almost completely cut off at 20 to 1, but you're getting my full natural sound. That's limiting.
Okay.
Okay. So you're
Okay.
giving yourself a ceiling that's below the technical digital limit where things start to sound really ugly, because digital clipping sounds really horrible because it's really, really efficient. And when it comes to clipping, you don't want efficiency. So lean, lop, and limit. There you go. That's it. Other controls you will see on digital mixers and other places, you'll see something called attack.
Right.
Okay. In any scenario where you're doing what we're doing here, which is non-musical, you want that to be 0. Just
Okay.
nothing. Gone.
All right. So what's the attack in this scenario right here? We can't tell.
They didn't give it to you, and when it's gone, you can assume it's 0.
Okay.
Because if it wasn't 0, every time I started to talk from being silent, you would hear the complete highest volume of my sound.
Okay.
You set so this is a trick we use in audio all the time. We got an organ playing, and it's playing sort of mid between the sound bed and the chorus that's way at the top, and we want it to punch through a little bit, but organ sounds don't have that initial click like a guitar will, or a piano. Then ding. Well, the is the sustain and the d is the click. And when you want one of those clicks and you don't have it, you open the attack to say around 20 milliseconds, and you use a fair bit of compression. When you do that, the compression creates the sustain sound, and what you left open with the attack creates the hit. This is also done quite a bit with bass guitar and other places. Now, in bass guitar, I'll tell you a secret. If you guys are ever mixing for somebody live and they sound really bad on bass guitar, use the 0 compressor and just squish it 8 to 1 and turn it up just loud enough so you can hear it. And all of that guy's playing, if he's with the bass guy, with the drums or not with the drums, it won't matter, because the drums are going to be taken over and being in control. So
right.
that's a trick to fix somebody who's really bad as a bass player. And the other way, going the other way to the other extreme, is how you make it sound really great for somebody who's really, really good.
Okay. Now let's go back to human voice, because a lot of us are working primarily with voice and not with instruments.
So let me talk one more about those 3 kinds of compression.
Okay.
For dummies, for guys who don't get it and just want
idiots
to turn one knob and have it work.
Yeah.
There's a compressor out there called a really nice compressor, RNC.
RNC, really, really nice compressor. I got it. Okay, good.
Okay. It's about 250 bucks.
Yeah.
It doesn't have XLRI ins and outs. It's just standard quarter-inch cable, I think, or RCA.
Okay.
I can't remember. And it is stereo. So you get your stereo signal in and you get a stereo signal out, and it does that lean, lop, and limit. And it's very nicely coordinated for people who don't know how much lean versus how much lop versus how much limit.
Right.
So it's all pre-programmed in there to work really well. And the nicer thing about that kind of compression is that you don't actually overuse any one of those three to compensate for the missing piece in the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really useful tool. It's a niche tool. You won't hear too many people talk about it, but I really love that thing.
Oh, I bet you do.
So
And I bet
there
I
you go.
wouldn't know what to do with it.
You put it in your signal chain and you turn the knob till it sounds good.
Well, that I could do.
Well, yeah. I
That I could
mean,
do.
that's actually the essence of learning how to do audio all the way around.
Is to have the ear. Yeah.
It's always to have the ear.
But once you've got the ear,
knowing,
but Michael, once you've got the ear, you've got to understand how the individual tools work to make what you hear translate into what you want it to sound like. And I'm beginning to get that now. So you're saying, okay, well, you've got got compression that will do this kind of thing. We're gonna do different kinds of things with compression. We're gonna do different kinds of things with EQ. But let's dumb it down and say, okay, I've got somebody, and all right, let me pitch you a scenario, and you tell me how you'd fix it.
let,
Okay.
okay, right,
All right.
all right.
All right.
We'll
You've
start
got
with what you want to do.
yeah, yeah. It is my show. Um, let's say you've got somebody that talks. They talk like this a lot because they're a shock jock, and then they also get really, really quiet. And I bet the audio guy is going nuts. How in the world do you deal with those kind of
Yeah.
extremes?
Well, and he
Fix.
whispers from the back of the room and he yells at the mic. So,
Yeah, yeah. How do you fix that?
well, compression.
Well, I thought compression just squeezed things.
Well, it does.
All right.
It creates a smaller dynamic range.
All right. Well, show me. I'll do the adjustments, but you
Okay.
show me in vMix how we would do. I'm going to reset everything here. I'll turn the
The
compression off.
ratio. Okay, so in this scenario, I would be more inclined to go towards a ratio of, say, somewhere in 5 to 1, where you were doing that lopping.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And then, as I'm getting crazy loud and you don't want it that loud, you tell me, okay, bring the threshold down till it sounds all right. Well, is this good or what? Where are we getting to the point where it sounds all right? Now, as I whisper back here, where's it loud enough? That's all there is. In some mixers, in some scenarios, you can get, and I would encourage the guys at vMix here to put this in. You can push the threshold way down to the bottom, but there's something called makeup gain, which allows you to bring up the volume of everything together.
Right. Right.
And that's really helpful, and they don't have that.
Well, now hold on. Let me go back to something, and you tell me if this would be the same. Can I just take the gain right here and move it up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now I've
But go
amplified that compressed signal.
first of all, go and compress the crap out of it.
Compress the crap out of it. Okay.
Yeah. So going, heavy threshold and heavy ratio till it's not really good enough. Like 100 dB is too far. Let's go down to, 70 or something.
Okay.
Okay, 12 to 1 compression. Now, if you say this isn't loud enough coming out, see the pre on the left is me. and my mic. The green on the right, that's what's after the compressor.
Right.
But let's say you needed it to come up a bit and be a little louder. Then you can go back to your general and boost it up some. And there you can see it starting to come up, and you're getting to -12 and so on. So what do you want to talk about?
All right. So now that I've limited you, I haven't limited you. I've compressed you using ratio and threshold, and then since the volume was too low, I've bumped up the volume by putting the gain up to, what is that, 16 decibels.
Right.
So I've got you at the volume that I want, but you can scream all you want to, and screaming won't make any difference.
Let's try it out. How's this? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it was about the same level. It just was a little crackly at the top, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's probably because something in the signal chain clipped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably my end, not yours. Look at that button over there underneath the reset.
Underneath the reset.
Automatic gain control.
Yeah.
Automatic gain control is a fun little toy that will automatically adjust the level depending on where I sit with the mic. And it's got a bit of a time constant to it, so it won't react instantly. But it reacts over, say, a half second or a second to kind of calm things down and level things out over time. That's what that's for.
I'm going to turn it back off. Should I have my gain set all the way down to 0 when I turn that on, or will it make any difference?
I don't know. It depends on how it was implemented, but this sounds all right, eh?
Yeah, and that's what the gain
set
is, 0. Okay.
So if you turn it on and it sounds good and it's not clipping or making a whole lot of problems for you, go for it. Leave it there.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to compression for just a second. So we're going to go back to the compression here, and I've got two different things that I'm working with. I've got ratio and threshold.
Right.
Ratio and threshold. Tell me, a minute ago when I gave you the scenario of a really loud talker and a really soft talker, you just picked out of your head the numbers on ratio and threshold. How did you know what numbers to work with?
Well, it's history, but it also has to do with those angles I was telling you about.
Okay.
That's my threshold. That's where it starts to come in.
All right.
When I'm lopping, that's where it starts to come in. And when I'm limiting, that's where it starts to come in.
Now, when you say come in, you're talking about a decibel level?
The dB level where the compressor starts to work.
Okay.
And the angle is the ratio. Think of it like a mirror.
Okay.
Think of it like a straight 45-degree angle is like a mirror, okay? It comes up, it comes out.
Yep.
The coming up is your audio signal at the source.
Right.
You're going out is the audio signal that you're distributing.
Okay.
If I'm leaning in, first of all, there's a lot of stuff that might not even get hit by this thing.
Sure.
It might just go out, all right?
But when it hits what decibel level what ratio would that be if it was just a little bit? Would that be a low ratio, like 2 to 1?
Or under.
Or under. Okay. So the more it tilts over, the higher the ratio would get.
That's correct.
Okay, all the way up to
20 to 1 is like this. Or if you use a low ratio, 21 looks like that. It's squishing the sound is what we usually say.
Okay.
And this is relating the input to the output. Squished way down, you could have a really loud input to a really not very loud output. That's how the graph works.
All right. So what does the first number represent? And what does the second number represent?
The first number is see the level where you got pre?
Yes.
And you got the meter going? Okay.
Yes.
That's your input. That's the bottom coming
up.
And the output, that's the post. Now you're going to get some guys, maybe even on the chat right now, and some other pros who have been around a while and say, "Well, Michael, you're just simplifying things too much. There's all kinds of other things going on here. There's RMS versus peak, and there's this and that. And the other. I know all that stuff. You don't need to know that.
Right.
The different compressors will have different characteristics, and generally you want to avoid the cheap ones, like $120 or something, if you're buying a standalone unit.
Uh-huh.
$250 usually doesn't get you much of a compressor either, and the RNC is an exception to that rule.
Okay.
Because some history that these guys actually started building the RNC as a bit of a hobby project that they were teaching people electronics with.
Right.
And it turned out to be so popular, they turned it into a product, but they never wanted to sell it for what the industry calls the right price. The right price for that compressor, by the way, would be around $2,000.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'll take it, thanks. But anybody else producing the similar product would charge that kind of money. So,
gotcha.
Where did you want to go next?
RNC. Well, we have grossly overstayed our welcome. We are 26 minutes over time. So the show is almost twice as long as it was supposed to be, and it's just gone by so quickly. What I suggest is right now we end the show. We go to pre-show. We take some questions from the chat room, and the chat room I think can also give us some direction on where they would like to see us go next time when I have you back on the show next time. Can we do that?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. All right.
It's been a lot of fun. I feel like I scratched my belly a little. I didn't even start.
I know the feeling. It's like, where did 6 hours go? Holy cow. All right. So we're gonna send Michael into muted purgatory, and we're gonna shut down this section of the show. But suffice to say, Michael's knowledge of audio exceeds mine just barely. And we're going to have him back on the show again in the future. And as you could tell, it took us a little while to get into the really good stuff, and I think we can start at that point next time. But I really do appreciate you guys showing up today. Those of you that are live, those of you that are watching us later after the fact, I appreciate that. If I can help you in any way with live streaming, shoot me an email, tom@easternshorebroadcasting.com. Just a calendar note, we're not going to have a show the week of Thanksgiving, so there won't be a show Wednesday in 2 weeks, but we will have one next week, and we will have one the week after Thanksgiving. But I do appreciate you guys being here for this show, and if you're watching live, stick around in chat, and we'll pepper Michael with some questions and see if we can't stump him, maybe, huh? So, golly gee, I'll see you next week. Thanks for coming. And we are done. All right, so let's see if we can bring Michael back, and let's see if we can bring him back with some audio. And Michael, that was outstanding. I think I'm beginning to get the symbiosis between you and me, and it took me a little while to get that. And I think next time we do a show, I'm gonna be a little bit more directed and kind of give you some parameters and say, okay, operate right here, and
what
just
I'm
let
used
you
to
go crazy.
What I'm used to actually is kibitzing with a bunch of audio guys who are trying to do something.
Yeah.
And they are usually overwhelming me with a bunch of questions, and I just respond.
Yep.
I go into a seminar and I say, well, have you got a computer with a web access? Can we get a website going? And they say, what? You're not lecturing off the web, are you? Well, let people find stuff on the internet and we'll talk about it.
Well, and we didn't even get to some of the good stuff. I mean, we've got this picture that we talked about.
Ooh.
I put that on the internet and I asked people to identify it. I need to go back and see how many. Don't say what it is,
Oh,
but
I know what it is. You
well,
know,
I
I
know.
gave it to you.
Yeah, I know that's your picture, but I put it out there on Facebook, and I want to see if people can identify what that is, and we'll have to talk about that next time. Now, Amnon, who is in a studio in Raleigh, North Carolina, and whose friend is Mike Phillips, and Mike Phillips taught me he taught me a lot. I remember a little about audio, but Amnon has a DBX 286 compressor in his studio,
Oh boy.
but he's not allowed to use it.
Yeah.
Why
Or
would
the
that be?
166. We were talking about the attributes of a compressor that we didn't want to discuss.
Yeah, yeah,
Its detector. See, in order to know where the threshold is and stuff, there has to be a circuit inside the box that says this is the right frequency to work on.
okay,
Okay, and all of them are tuned to react to a frequency after a specified length of time.
okay,
But as you know, different frequencies have different wavelengths.
right,
So how much time do you give it
right,
to say this is the detectors has detected this presence of this particular frequency? Well, in practice, when the expensive ones do it, they do it not with one detector, but with a bunch of them.
uh-huh. Depending on the
Okay.
different frequencies. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And so each one of them will be frequency isolated to a little specific band, and they will like each one go, oh, I see it. Okay. That's expensive to do. You got to figure on, filters to isolate those little bands of frequencies, and then timers and so on to jump on it or not. Those things take money, and those old cheap compressors are set to one frequency
yeah,
that they get kind of right, and the rest don't get right at all.
right,
And I've used those. I bought those when I was starting, and I figured, oh well, I understand the problem, but I'll see if I can make the compromise work, and it
right,
don't work.
right.
And that's one really good reason to start with digital and get into digital really quick, because processor power is cheap.
Okay, there's a question in chat from Kenny, and Kenny says, does digital compression exhibit artifacts that we can hear?
Sure. Okay.
Like what?
Digital. Let's just talk about digital versus analog
Okay,
altogether. Doesn't matter what it is.
I've got 3
Okay.
weeks. Come on, let's do it.
No. Seriously.
Come on, give it to me in a nutshell.
The difference between an analog waveform in analog space and a digital waveform in digital space is nothing. The nice
Okay.
thing about digital is we can do all kinds of processing and do all kinds of fancy stuff that would be electronically a very expensive solution. That's
Okay.
it.
We can slice and dice with digital that we can't do with analog as
Yeah.
easily. Okay.
I was going to talk about. Let me talk about something using a whole bunch of gobbledygook that is just terms. Maybe some engineering people are interested and they want to go look at this stuff. When you design a Chebyshev filter, the Chebyshev filter has a characteristic of an angle of cutoff versus what we call the pass band. The pass
Okay.
band is everything that gets passed along. Okay, the steeper that curve gets, the more ripple you get up here. And
Okay.
it doesn't matter if it's analog or digital, because the filters are designed exactly the same way. There's an electronics version, and then there's a mathematics version. Every audio filter made, and pretty much every video filter made, could be implemented as a ratio of two polynomials. An x squared, so it's a second order polynomial divided by another second order polynomial.
Okay.
X squared plus bx plus c, where you fill in the a, b, c's for the top and the bottom, and that becomes a filter.
Okay.
do the same thing with resistors and capacitors, and that becomes a filter.
Okay.
Okay. And when you don't want all of those electronic filters ringing and pushing each other around, then you put it through something called an op amp, and then it can't, nothing goes backwards. It all goes just forward through the signal chain the way you want it to.
Okay.
And the ringing doesn't happen. That's my arm waving definition of what electronics versus digital is all about.
Okay.
They're two different ways of expressing the exact same reality. And people will, somebody's saying rabbit hole talk, Chebyshev, Butterworth, and other cute names describe how sharp the filter is. That's right. And if you want a bucket more full of filter types, we can talk about FIR filters and IIRs and, never mind. Most
maybe next
filters in audio are Butterworth filters. And the reason why is I was talking about that Chebyshev filter design. We don't like the ripple.
Okay.
Except in one particular circumstance where we will take a ripple that goes and then down.
Okay.
So, somebody really wants to know, that's a Linkwitz-Riley crossover.
Pow. Right over my head. Right over my head. Right. It didn't even slow down.
I don't even want to go to explain that to people who know engineering and audio. Siegfried Linkwitz is a friend of mine, but it's just beyond most people to get into that. All they really care about is, hey, does it sound good? Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
use it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Drive the car. Never mind.
That's exactly right. And that's probably where I've done you a disservice, is I've tried to crank you down so very far.
Well, no, because your audience is the same. They're a lot of the guys that are on this chat are just going, boy, could I just plug the mic in and it'll work?
Right.
I know that.
Right.
I'm not trying to do a design class here.
Right.
Audio design is something I get into, as I said when we did the intro.
My knowledge of compression has quadrupled since yesterday.
No, that's good.
In what you've explained to me today, especially today. And I'm very interested. I'd like to take it deeper and understand it more, and I think we all would, because we all know that we can improve our audio. Now, some of the issues that folks are dealing with audio in live streaming have absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about, because you're talking about the characteristics of audio, whereas some of the issues that we're having is the mechanics of moving audio around and losing it or doubling it or whatever it might be because of the different pathways that we're sending it. And we're unintentionally sending it places where we didn't want it to go. We just did that by accident and didn't even know we did.
There's a myth in the audio industry that we've created, which is a real disservice to anybody who's using it, and that is basically that we can fix anything. Okay?
Well, you can.
To a point. I wanted to respond to Martin in the chat. He was asking about how we set the volume to be the same as what they use on the broadcasts and so on.
Okay, that's a good one.
A mixture, Martin, of compression and that AGC auto gain circuit. That's really the easiest way to do it. And then beyond that, just knowing that your audio levels aren't clipping and they're good enough to start with. Okay?
So would there be Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, the more sophisticated and smooth and clean you want the sound to be, the more money it's going to cost. That's just the rule. Okay? The SM57 mic that I showed you earlier is pretty much $100 mic.
Mm-hmm.
This one that I'm using right now is a $350 mic,
Hmm.
and they go up from there.
Sure.
You get like Bob Dylan on his latest album. That's a $25,000 mic.
Wow.
And what is that all for? Well, it's the not for the contents of the microphone so much as it is for the guy who sat there for a year or two and fussed and fussed and fussed until he got Bob Dylan's voice just right.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Okay.
my computer's going crazy here. Let me just do something. Okay, I'm better.
All right. So let's go really a real basic question. For example, if I have a broadcast like this one, for example, is there a target decibel level that I would want to pick to broadcast? I mean, I'm looking at my
Well,
screen here, and I see I've got a volume meter right there that shows me
mhm.
there's a peak of negative 8.7, negative 10. Just kind of depends
I
on whether I'm speaking or
personally,
not.
uh, when you're talking about volume on a recording or volume on, say, Facebook or YouTube,
Okay,
you go watch stuff on different channels. It's all over the map, right?
it is right.
Okay, and so people have, been annoyed by that, but they kind of gotten used to it. I would say don't compress so much that you sound as loud as the craziest people. And where you're at's pretty good, usually, personally.
Okay,
But if you give yourself 6 dB of headroom, typically that you
well,
usually don't exceed.
what do you mean 6 dB of headroom? What's
You
headroom,
know,
and how does that apply to
okay,
6 dB?
if you give yourself 6 dB of headroom, typically you have enough headroom, unless you're dealing with something like drums, in which case you need 12 dB of headroom. What's
Okay,
headroom?
what's the top? What's the top
You
that I
know,
don't want to bump
on
my
your
head into?
on your Windows volume mixer down there
Yeah,
at the bottom corner.
yeah,
Okay, when the green bar goes all the way to the top,
yeah.
that's the top of your headroom.
Okay,
So that's kind of banging on the ceiling.
right.
All right.
So
So,
so what's the measurement of that? Zero?
well, we that would be 0 dBV, not dBA.
Zero.
0 dBV.
Okay.
dBV is a measurement of, going back to the place where it came from, 0 dB, and Martin's right, dBFS. That's fine. It's digital. I equate dBFS and dBV are the same thing. Okay, in a line level signal, dB V max is out at 15 volts, and your line level input will do it the same way exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so just keeping it really simple, the big number at the top and the big number at the bottom max out. And if any sound is louder than that, it just becomes a flat line and turns into a square wave, which sounds like horrible.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. That's what your headroom is talking about. So what do you do about bringing that headroom down 6 dB? By the way, dB is a ratio. So
Right.
dBV is always referenced to plus and minus 15 volts. There you go.
Okay. So if I want to leave myself 6 decibels of headroom, what do I look at to measure that 6 decibels or subtract in order to see if I've got 6 decibels of headroom? What am I measuring to, from, with?
You're measuring with the digital input that you're receiving the sound into.
Okay.
Now, not everybody's going to show the scale.
Right.
By the way, Martin, yes, you're right. I don't want to get into it. For
Yeah,
working
careful,
purposes, I'm
careful
right,
with Martin.
and for technical purposes, you're right.
All right, so for example, I am looking at vMix, and let me flash it up here. This is the audio mixer in vMix,
So they're
and
showing you little notches, but they don't put a scale on it.
yeah, let me sharpen that up just a little bit. Okay, and this is your audio right here. This one right there.
I'm not seeing what you're showing me.
Okay,
Okay, there it is.
entitled Audio Line 2.
Okay.
So that's you right there. I'll just flash off and on the follow button so you can see which one it is.
Okay. But you can see on the knob scale, there's little notches there, all the
Yes.
way up on both sides.
Right.
Okay, and the same thing with the band on the side. It's green to a certain level, and then it goes red on you.
Right.
Okay, you can be fairly arbitrary about exactly where that hits, but when it hits red, it's probably clipping or very close to it,
Okay.
and you want to bring it down a squinch, a
And and I
nudge.
and I'm down a squinch.
Yeah, you are, and that's decent. You're not going to get the clipping sound out of it.
Okay.
That's good. You know, we can get into dB, uh, but what I was saying about 6 dB down is probably where the yellow starts to show up there. That's
Uh-huh.
that's normally where most people would set that yellow at. And if you're doing drums or anything with a lot of percussion, you want to bring that down a squinch more, another chunk of the same size.
All right. Let me see if I can't give you a different view of the same thing.
If you've got certain, like any audio mixers that are built for music, for example, they all basically will give you that exact scale in dB. I could actually talk about dB scale versus bits,
Well,
because people have 16-bit audio and they have 24-bit audio, and they like to know the difference. How much better are things? There you go. You've got a scale.
yeah. Now tell me what I'm seeing here. I mean, it says peak left and right.
Okay, so it's peaking. There's a peak. It's not telling you RMS. It's telling you the peak, which is good. You want that for a scale like this. And it's saying it's peaking at -5, -6 dB over a little period of time. That's actually perfect.
Well,
All
I
right.
set that. So, I obviously got lucky.
Yeah, but you can see right now that it's much less when I'm not talking. It went down to about -40 or so. So the minus scale there is always talking about dB relative to its maximum.
Okay. So is
Okay.
that -6.1 that I saw there just a second? Does that mean I have 6.1 decibels of headroom?
Roughly. Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the idea here would be to look at the peak, and if that number was negative 5.9 down to negative 0.1, I would not have enough headroom.
Well, that's all relative, okay? Because as you were saying earlier about somebody who screams into the microphone, maybe you need even more than that because his dynamic range is just nuts.
I would need more headroom.
You may need more headroom because what
Okay.
you want your headroom to be is, you want to be able to capture the loudest sound possible, and you want to do that with a little bit of a safety margin.
Okay.
Okay, 6 dB is maybe a little bit heavier than some people set it at, but I don't want to have to sit there and watch it.
Right.
I want to be 99% of the time exactly right, and when I've got a 16-bit sound card or 16-bit audio, I've got 96 dB of total headroom. That's what the 16 bits means. Most people think that they need like 24-bit sound and so on. You don't need it. It's nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
But this microphone here, I asked you yesterday, guess how much dB headroom these things have?
And I
And your
said,
magic,
what did I say? 20 or 50?
no, you
No, I
said
said 50.
50. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just about exactly right for this meter. And the most sensitive mics would go another 10. So on the most sensitive mic available, period, you've got 30 dB of unused headroom in a 16-bit audio. Okay? Now, you can make that audio less efficient if you want to. That's what the preamp settings on the mixer are for, and you get preamp settings. You set how loud the volume is on your input. Okay? And the reason for that is because we've got all kinds of levels coming in all over the place. We got, line level and mic level, and microphones are all different sensitivities and so on. So you got to have some control, some adjustability in the electrical input side,
Right.
and then mix from there.
Right.
Okay. So now I went and looked at the chat again and lost my spot.
Oh, I know. The chat's the worst. I'm thinking
Now,
about firing all those guys.
so balance in between microphones depends on what they are. If you got a very insensitive mic, you might be able to get away with more headroom or less headroom. If I put this condenser aside and go get this guy out, my monster, the Rode NT. This, by the way, is the microphone of choice for all the voiceovers done for all of the movies and stuff like that. It's an awesome mic, but you have to treat it right. Same company makes this one. Those are way more sensitive. For those, even just on a casual basis, I go for 12 dB headroom just because it can and will blow the preamp easily.
Okay.
When I do voiceovers with that mic, I put a screen in front of it. I had it here somewhere. I don't know where I stuffed it, and I go like this for my plosives. Pa, pa, Pink Panther, whatever. Because when I put something in front of my mouth like this, the air goes that away and that away, and it doesn't go straight into the mic and make a big bang.
Right.
Because that's what that mic is capable of and will do if you don't do that.
Gotcha.
Okay. So is it a universal rule to use 6 dB of headroom? Absolutely not.
But for what we're doing,
it's a general rule of thumb that usually works.
it would be a good rule of thumb. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to go back to a shot that we had a little while ago, and this is your audio.
Okay.
And the 6 dB is actually, I guess that's marked there on the side, just to the right of the post column. Let me see.
Yeah, you're getting a scale there now, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
That's
and
the only place that I can
out-
see a scale.
And the post is hitting -6,
Right.
but your pre is actually clipping a little bit sometimes.
Right.
So turn your device volume down just a squinch,
Okay.
because the device volume is probably your preamp. And that's actually going to be part of the Windows control for that thing. Oh no, you don't have to turn it down to 0. But you turn it down just a couple of notches there.
Well,
Till you see the as you go up to the top. Oh, it's not doing it. Okay.
no, it's not affecting
somehow the
anything.
somehow the pre isn't working.
Let's turn off the.
Where you could go to next. I don't know where you would go to next. Anyway, it's clipping a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
You see by the red there. So maybe if I turn my gain down a little bit. Oh no, my gain's right at the bottom here. I'd have to go onto the mixer to do it. Or I sit back.
Right. And
But
then,
you can see where the 6 dB of visual headroom is useful, but it doesn't tell you the whole story.
right.
What we're actually talking about here is a concept in audio we call unity gain.
Okay.
Everything except EQ, you want to have clip at the same level, right throughout.
Okay.
So your mixer, your EQ, your amps, every piece of the chain, and you described a long chain earlier, it doesn't matter how long the chain is. If everything clips at the same levels, then you will get the maximum headroom for the system,
Okay.
you know? Somebody's saying in the chat that I should use a pop filter. Well, there's actually a pop filter built into this mic. It's a vocal mic the same way the SM58 is. It's made to be, right on top of the mic is fine.
Right. Right.
Okay. Um,
This is amazing. This is just amazing. I mean, I would love just to crawl around inside your brain for a while and watch you think about all this stuff, because it would be like I can't imagine what it would be like.
well, when I set this mic up and the other mics that we haven't gotten to for the show, when I set those up, I set up the gain structure so that when I was yelling in the mic, it wouldn't clip.
Right.
Okay. And then I set the gain structure from the mixer into my computer preamp at the same gain level. And then, so it's all through the signal chain. Everything I'm feeding to you, it's all giving the same basic level, and it's all, if it ever hits the ceiling, it's going to all hit at the same place.
Right.
And that way, one device isn't taking a chunk, doesn't using up a chunk of headroom that the other devices can't relate to.
One program note, because Kenny's got to leave. Kenny is asking if we're going to post the show today with the post show, because I think in some ways, as usual, the post show ends up being some of the best content. But yes, Kenny, we'll post 2 shows for today. One will be just the recorded portion of the show, which actually is almost an hour. And then there'll be the other part that includes a little bit of pre-show and then all of the post-show. They'll be side by side on the YouTube channel. So you'll have to go to our YouTube channel. Just do a search for Streaming Idiots under YouTube, and you'll hit it, and you can go to the Eastern Shore Broadcasting page and find all the individual videos there. So sorry about that, Michael. Thank you. Now, Michael, you said that you've got your gain set on your mixer today, and it's your mixer that's feeding Skype, because we're communicating over Skype today. Do you have any compression set at all?
Nada.
No compression. Just
Nope.
just the gain adjusted for
No compression, no EQ. This is you're getting the Rode S1. Not necessarily at its finest, because that old mixer isn't all that great. And I've been noticing, Martin, again, you're right. Internally on that mixer over there, it's 20-bit. And so it has a lot of notional headroom internally for the process before it goes out as well. And it goes out nice and clean. But the headroom doesn't change. You go into a device, headroom mucks around, and it comes out. The in and outs are always based on that 15 volt or the digital 0 dBFS that you're talking about. Okay. Every device works that way. There's a lot of old mics that you can get that are 600 volts internally, and they use all of that, but their output doesn't. And they do that so they can get really, really strong impulse responses out of old mechanical systems that really aren't built for, or, the design tolerances weren't that good in the bad old days. So
Interesting.
I mean, I don't want to do this for the general audience, but I can tell you a lot about the internal designs of a lot of circuitry in the audio industry. The Neve desk, the Harrison desk, all kinds of really interesting stuff that's out there. The general rule we talked about for EQ doesn't apply to every desk, every mixer. For example, the famous Michael Jackson sound is the sound of the Harrison mixer. And it has a special characteristics that when you turn the gain up on that EQ and you hit it really hard, it gets narrower. So it starts fat, and then when you hit it, it gets narrower. And that's how Michael Jackson got all of those really loud, thin sounds out of his vocal. He wasn't doing anything different than you and I do. He just had a magic trick up his sleeve.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There you go.
Very good. All right. Giles, our resident Brit expert, is saying there's a slight gravelly sound in your audio. Is that because the pre-audio is clipping in vMix? He says he's noticed it on his own audio.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably because your gain levels are set a bit high. Let's experiment for a second.
Okay.
Let me go over to the mixer.
This is the good stuff. Never unplug anything.
My headphones unplugged. That's the one thing I dislike about these headphones is they're made for people who take breaks and don't take their headphones off by unplugging the wire.
Gotcha.
So is that better now, or are we clipping less? You're probably seeing a little bit more headroom in your inputs as well.
Let's look. This is what it is.
It looks a little cleaner. It doesn't. Well, there it's clipped. Okay. Back here it didn't clip. So is there a difference on what you're hearing between this and what's up there?
We'll have to ask Giles to speak to that one because he's the one that heard it.
Check. 1 2 1 2. Where's it going? It's going to minus 0.3, minus 0.4. It's actually probably not clipping, but the other thing is the digital transmission can do it. You know, you could just have a bad connection to us. That's all.
Sure.
I could have a bad connection to Tom. It happens.
Could be Skype.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, I think, frankly, I think your audio sounds great considering what all it's going through to get here.
Well, that's the nice thing about digital electronics is that they all have pretty much perfect internal sound. Back in the old analog days, op amps were expensive, so they didn't use them as much as they should have. If you've listened to any of the old Mackie mixers, especially in some old churches, and they all howl at each other. And one person sings, and the next person next to them is on the channel next to them, and you can hear one of them, but not both. And that's because there's no proper op amps in the mix between the channels, and it's just feeding the electronics back and forth, and it sloshes back and forth like it's not supposed to. So, cheap design is basically a function of the cost of the production. It's not that they don't know better. They did. They still do.
All right. I'm going to go into Skype, into the audio section, and see if I can't just adjust your volume.
Are we using automatic gain control? It's checked.
Yeah.
Uncheck it. Let's go see what that looks like.
All right, that's unchecked.
So is this is still clipping into the pre. This is still showing a clip.
Yeah.
I don't know what the scoop is there. It could be any piece of the signal chain. It could be my preamp coming into the computer, although it's a Steinberg. They're usually all right. The output of the mixer, that's an old O1V digital, the original O1V from the dawn of digital.
Okay. Well, this is a great case to say you've got a chain, and what is it in the chain that's causing the problem, and I've found it. And sometimes just knowing where to look is half the battle.
Yeah.
But let's see if I can.
And I generally,
this is it right here.
I generally start at, the head of at the mic, at the mixer, and work my way through the signal chain that way. Or I'll start from, what I know is going into the crossover or going into the speakers and start from that end and work back to the mixer, depending on what the problem is.
Yeah, and where I've got this setting right now, I don't know if you can see it moving here on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is what's producing this. So as you speak, Michael,
Mm-hmm. Now you
we can watch the pre's go up into the red, and then.
But they're not. They're staying below zero. It says 0.4 and so on. I'm not sure that that's clipping.
Can
It
you
might
get
be
it
the
higher
software
than
lying.
zero?
No. That's what that whole gain structure and the ceiling is all about.
Right. So let's go back to this one, and I'm simply just going to take the Skype audio, and I'm just going to crank it down a couple of notches.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay. And
that's-
now your graph is showing lower and shouldn't be any clipping, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to get that horrible sound at his end, because there could be some problems on his computer.
Sure. And to my voice, to my ears, you sound as gravelly as you did before.
Okay.
I don't know that we fixed anything, but by doing that, other than just keeping the little red from showing up at the top of the chart.
Yeah. If you think I sound gravelly now, wait till I get a cold. I can actually, on occasion, when things are tuned exactly right, I can sing sub-audible. You can feel it, but you can't hear it.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I love it. All right.
Yeah. Step Back says it sounds better there now.
Oh, really?
Well, Step
Okay.
Back, it could still be that Tom is giving you a little bit of headroom and you could still have a setting that is too high. So if Tom's fix here doesn't fix it for you, and you get that same sound on your system, there's something on your system that you need to bring down just a touch. All right.
Yeah, what's the maximum number of links in an audio chain you could get? I bet there could be dozens.
There's no such thing as a limit.
Yeah.
That's what an op amp is. That's the promise of an op amp. And whether it's a digital op amp or an electronic one, you're always producing a massive signal relative to a very weak receiver. The impedance stuff, I'm not getting into that. But that's the essence of what a transistor does and the essence of what an op amp is. All an op amp is see, with a transistor, it goes from 0 volts up to a certain level, and then it's got a gain associated with that. So it's either the same volume or 10 times the volume or whatever it is. There's always a fixed amount based on an input voltage, okay? But you can't go below 0. The problem is that all audio goes both above 0 and below 0.
Right.
In other words, even air pressure with no vibration, that's the 0 point. And so, to use Robert Neve, for example, the Neve preamp, what Robert decided was, I'm going to take that audio signal and I'm going to boost it a certain amount of voltage so I don't have to deal with that stupid crossover. All right? So negative comes down, but it never really hits 0, and positive goes way up, and there's a level in the middle that it tends to work at. The problem is that those transistors are a little more effective when they get higher power. So Robert decided, okay, I'm going to put something in the circuit after that to make it a little weaker. Do you know what that is altogether when you add that up electronically?
No clue.
That's a compressor. So he used a voltage offset and then put a compressor on the top end to make it kind of sound the same top or bottom, doesn't matter. Another trick he used is that one of the properties you can do that op amp design kind of shows off really well, but you can actually do it with transistors as well, is you can take a signal and turn it upside down. It's called an inverted op amp. I won't show you the circuitry to do it, but you can.
And that's just obviously just a digital thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it's actually analog.
Oh.
Inverting in digital, you can do easily. Just put a times -1 on it, and away you go. Hey, and it gets worse. We got to talk about phase.
No.
We got to talk about phase and phase angles. No.
Give me the quiz now. They're asking in the chat, is there going to be a quiz?
No.
No quiz.
The quiz is how good did you do on your last
Exactly.
audio?
Exactly. The quiz is real life. Real life.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so, the guys I really love to respond to, and the reason I'm looking at the chat is you got a specific technical problem, like we talked about. Somebody got noise hitting the head or whatever. Those are the things that we really want to focus on and help you through.
Right.
Yes, auto gain control brings in background noise and junk. And you have to have a really good attenuation control.
Yeah, I just turned off the auto gain right there.
You missed the old Radio Shack days? Well, let me tell you, son. As I showed at the top of the show, that is a preamp, and that is a microphone, and that is just a piece of brass tubing with a little Panasonic capsule in it, and the preamp has dual sensitivity. It's got one level of sensitivity is really small signal, one is really high signal, and it's based on the same microphone, and it comes out of here, and I use this to measure and calibrate audio systems because it's a really flat mic. And I watched a show a while back where somebody spent over $2,000 to get one of these. You can go crazy. And if you're really good at engineering and you understand what you're doing, a soldering iron is your best friend.
Yeah, well, you got to get 2 out of 2 on that one.
Exactly. You got to have both.
Yep, that's right.
And I've been, like I said, I've been doing this since I was 18. It's been my hobby. It turned into my profession just because I was persistent with it. And I've never stopped monkeying around and playing around, and I've never been afraid to go try stuff.
Cool. Ken, in the chat, I did have the automatic gain on. That's the ACG. And so I turned it down and then bumped up Michael's gain, so I may have just canceled one out of the other, but it may have gotten rid of some of that garbling that you were hearing. Michael, I hate to do this because I would love to hang out with you all day, but I've got to go back to work and let some of these folks go back to work and post this video and all this stuff. But promise me that you will come back on the show.
I'll do that.
Okay, good. And we'll figure out a good date. We don't want it to be too long because everybody's going to forget what we talked about, but we don't want it to be too soon because they have to have a chance to absorb it and play with some of it and see. And
I got some irons in the fire that need to be attended to as well. Okay. So we'll have to chat about that.
So maybe December, maybe first of the year, something like that. That'll be great. Good, you're a champ, folks. Thanks so much for turning on. Michael, hang on for just a second. For everybody watching now, I appreciate you hanging in there with us. It's been a lot of fun, and go back and watch it and take notes, and you will be quizzed on it later. It will be your next broadcast. Ken wants to know, do you reveal the ugly picture? Oh, shall we tell him what it was, Mike?
You want to tell him? I told you.
Well, yeah, I knew what it was as soon as I saw it, but sure. Only because you told me that there was dye added. That was red dye added. Was it red dye added and black dye are added or blue dye added?
I think it's purple actually.
Purple. Okay, and that is the eardrum.
Well, it's what comes after the eardrum and the stirrup and all of that. That's the cochlea of the ear. That's
Okay.
where the sound goes after all of the incredible mechanical multipliers that are inside your ear have done processing it. And that's, the wide part, as you guessed, is the bass. And the narrow little part at the top, that's where you hear all of the high frequencies.
And we need to
And there's
talk.
little,
We need to talk about ears next time, and how
okay.
people hear, and I think that'll help people with their audio too. And Giles says, "Is that an ear?" I say, "Yes, Giles. It is part of an ear. It's obviously not this part."
Yeah.
Michael, you're a champ. Hold on another second. And folks, we're going to let the show run on out. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys, and we'll see you next week.